Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking about a lot of things that I've really forgotten. But during the break, we were talking about the importance of the box now, today, as we sit here and you're watching television at home. What is going to happen against the background of our children immersed in the social media? The little thing in their pockets is more important than any other source of information.
Certainly in the West, certainly in Europe,
Yep.
And America, although America's a bit slower on the technological uptake than Europe. The kids are streaming everything, and they're watching things on their phone. For a start, their eyesight's better than us, or their iPad, or their laptop.
Will it remain?
Yeah, well, eventually, of course, they'll decide, let's make these screens bigger. That's a good idea, because all ideas are secular. Things come around. But there's an aging demographic to television, so the kids aren't prepared to sit down for half an hour, 45 minutes, and watch television news. So, the reason for television news is diminishing, although there is still very much a place for it. But most of it is now on the web. And that is, again, a danger, because the web can produce all kinds of journalists who don't have a clue.
Right.
They're not properly trained, they're not particularly sort of worldly wise, and most importantly of all, they're not edited properly.
Yeah. There's a buzzword going around these days, citizen journalists. See?
Yes.
Anybody can pick up his telephone.
Which is good for an eyewitness account.
Yes.
I remember covering the demonstrations in Iran, the last lot in 2009, before these, this time. And so many great eyewitness descriptions from very brave young Iranians, very brave indeed, to be able to sort of get to us and talk online. But mainly sort of citizen journalists or citizen, whatever they're called, bloggers, they're rants mostly.
Yeah.
You know, they're angry about something, or they're hysterical about it, or they're cross about it. You know, sort of calm, be a bit more dispassionate, which is what you're taught to be as a journalist. And I see many television reporters, presenters, and certainly citizen bloggers, not being edited and not being dispassionate and not being editorially wise, but most of all, not being edited.
You have reported from the comfort of television studios. You have also reported from the discomfort of flashpoints and very difficult places to see. Any particular experience that haunts you?
There have been a few, certainly covering wars, but I didn't cover any when I was with Al Jazeera, but what I did do was started investigating organized crime in Eastern Europe. And that was really quite frightening at times. To the extent that once in a small hotel somewhere in Bulgaria, the door to my room was taken off while I was out shooting. And when I came back, there was no door in my hotel room, which was a little bit of a message saying, we know where you are, Stephen, and we know what you're doing. Because I was investigating organized crime because the European Union was supposedly concerned the country was run by organized crime. And I couldn't possibly comment that it was still organized crime that runs the country. But that's the allegation. But so quite dangerous. And then I went on to Romania to look at organized corruption, high-level and low-level corruption. Then I went to Moldova to look at people trafficking. And there's no doubt Moldova is at the center of world people trafficking, especially young women around the world. And all these stories I did mean we needed minders and we needed security, especially went into Roma areas in Romania, which were very dangerous. So, you know, I sort of put the war stuff to one side because I don't really want to sort of remember a lot of that stuff. But it was the organized crime and corruption most recently that I remember distinctly, and sometimes think, Stephen, gosh, did you do that? I remember being locked up in prison, certainly in Romania for 2 nights, which was quite frightening.
Good?
It was horrible. Milosevic locked me up for a night in Belgrade once, just to send me a message during the Bosnian War. That was quite heavy. But yes, so some not very nice moments.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the fate of the journalist, isn't it?
Yeah, if you tell the truth, you've got to expect to suffer the slings and arrows, because you know, a lot of people want to shoot the messenger.
Yes.
And that's a very interesting point about, do people want to hear the truth, or don't they? Or do they only want to hear their truths?
Well, we take it upon ourselves to report the truth.
Well,
as
hopefully.
it is happening.
Well, yes, we do. But then, if I sort of go to Israel and criticize Benjamin Netanyahu,
Yeah.
does that mean I'm anti-Semitic? You know, if I sort of criticize the level of immigration, does that mean I'm racist? And so on and so on. It's, you know, sort of, if you're looking objectively at a story, but it comes out in favor of one side,
Yeah.
then you're suddenly labeled. And this is very dangerous. It's stopping people from having the courage to tell truths that some people don't want to hear.
But in that process, I think that it is just natural that somebody will be heard.
Yes, but those somebody who will be heard, as you call them, are often the loudest voices.
Right.
And they're often the minority, but the minority often have the loudest voices. And they are largely and increasingly controlling the majority of voices.
Well, let's change the topic. Come back to President Clinton.
Oh, yes.
You spent some time, some good
Yes.
time with him.
Yes.
And
It
what
was
did you
great.
talk about? How does he come across?
Well, I mean, even the most, somebody said to me, even the most ardent feminist woman goes a bit weak at the knees when they meet Mr. Clinton.
And it's even cool.
I wish. But obviously when we sat down together at dinner, and I went into journalist mode. Oh, rattle those questions. And after sort of a few drinks and the first course, I suddenly thought, Stephen, why don't you shut up and let this man enjoy his dinner? So I shut up largely. And he started talking. As opposed to replying to a question. And we conversed then very easily. And I looked at my watch. I said, gosh, we're on the coffee course. And I asked him, obviously I'm still curious about so much that went on in the White House. And he said a lot, none of which I'm going to repeat now. And I've never repeated the conversation, because it wouldn't be right. Because it was Chatham House rules in a way.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Otherwise he would never have talked to me. And people won't talk to you unless you abide by those rules. And that's what's seen me through 43 years of journalism, that I can still talk to a lot of people, and they'll know I won't reveal some of the stuff. Maybe in the book, as you say. But no, we had a very good dinner. And then the next day, I said, well, come on, we'll do an interview. And his security detail were pulling him away, saying, no, you can't go on, you can't go on there. And my editor was saying, no, I know Chelsea, we were at Oxford together. And in the end, he did give us a few sound grabs, but not a complete interview. But I met him then, as you say, in Davos with Bill Gates. And Bill Gates by then was talking about polio, not IT. So he very regally granted me an interview. And so my sins were forgiven, maybe. And Mr. Clinton was talking about, President Clinton was trying to raise money for Haiti, for the relief fund there. So it was good. But Davos was fascinating. I did so many years there, the World Economic Forum. And I'm still not convinced it's worth a penny's worth of anybody's attention.
How do you see, I mean, you have spent some time in the Middle East. How do you see this, the developments right now? I mean, the other day, President Trump said that MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is our man.
Well, he's obviously established a rapport with him, and it's very interesting to sort of see what MBS is up to. I mean, this night of the long knives in the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh was fascinating, and the only way you could pay your bill, you had to pay your bill before you left the hotel. But in some cases, it was a couple of $1 billion before you could get out of there. But, you know, some people ask me why Trump went to Riyadh first as president. Was it to do with Sunni Shia, the war that's developing there? Was it to do with Yemen? Was it to do with oil, you know, war? Israel, Iran? What was it, the geopolitics? And it turned out that I had a very good contact, and it was nothing to do with any of that. The reason he went to Riyadh, and this is at the very basis of the estimation of Trump, was because he discovered, because he didn't know, that in Qatar, they hosted the Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, as well as quite a few American troops. And he said, well, how can they host these people? They've got to be terrorists, haven't they? So why don't you put an embargo on them? So the Saudis loved to do that, so they did. But what that meant, the reason he'd asked for that, was because he wanted to sell American LNG to China. He didn't want Qatar selling LNG to China. So a very basic business decision. Forget the politics, because he's not a politician. He's many things, but he's not a politician. But he is a businessman. And if you look at Trump in that prism of business, I think people will understand a lot more about what makes him tick, with television as well. But, you know, sort of business is what he does. And he's obviously given carte blanche to MBS to do what he likes to do. And he is sort of saying he wants a more moderate Islam. Whether that's true or not. And, you know, he's thrown a bone in saying women can drive as of next year, although the Saudis are already building detention centers only for women drivers who are naughty, and they still need permission from their husbands to drive if it happens in June 2018 or this year. But he's saying, I'm cracking down on corruption. He wants to send a message from MBS is he wants inward investment. He supposedly wants to build this city in the desert that I don't believe will ever happen, staffed by robots. 5 billion just for that, or 50 billion, or whatever the figures are. They're just monopoly money, it's huge amounts. But to do that, because of the way oil and gas is going, he wants inward investment into Saudi Arabia. And nobody's going to invest in Saudi Arabia while they still consider them to be a head-chopping kingdom.
Right. Stephen, we are nearly at the end of the program. I would like your feedback about the other President Donald Trump. I mean, there's a book that has come out today, I think, and it has made some revelations. And this is the book that people are talking about. What do you see?
Well, they're talking about it today and tomorrow and the next day. And then the circus will move on. Okay, so
you don't think it will have any impact on politics?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. Okay, so there's chaos at Camelot. Okay, so Trump lies in bed eating hamburgers, watching 3 television screens, and doesn't read anything. But tell me something new. I mean, stop being hysterical about Trump. There is a lot of criticism towards him, and most of it entirely valid. He's an egocentric sociopath and a misogynist and many, many things. But let's look at his record internationally. Let's see what happens. I'm a bit worried about his attitude towards Iran, and whether he has a grip on the Middle East or not, I don't know. But his big pal, for the moment, financially perhaps, business-wise perhaps, is Saudi Arabia. That might change tomorrow. His relationship with Mr. Kim, I've got a bigger button than yours, is Dr. Strangelove territory, isn't it? I think, you know, when he gets a second term and things change.
You think he will get one?
Well, at the moment, you know, America's richer than ever because of Trump.
Thank you, Steve, for giving us the time.
It's a pleasure. Really enjoyable.
It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
An honor. Good. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you have enjoyed the show as much as we have. It was a pleasure hosting today, particularly Stephen Cole, somebody from our own profession, somebody very distinguished. Bye for now. Same time, same channel. next week.